All right, let's jump into this ISC, which the little rumblings I heard about it's essentially damage control for what happened. I'm going to say this before I watch it. I got a lot of crap for just sharing my feelings around structural salvage and the changes. Before knowing what they're going to say here or anything like that, I don't think we get the changes that we currently have coming in the PTU without speaking our minds on the system. I think if everybody just stayed quiet and said, it's just part of the process, I think things would have gone much slower than they did this time around. I think we got a lot of swift changes, trying to find the right place. They started out with the buffer cargo areas and how much those can hold, and that was really, really good. And now they moved to the pricing changes on RMC versus construction materials. I think that's going to work really well, but nothing will change my mind on the fact that this is not what I expected it to be. And the second seat of the Reclaimer is a bit boring. The Vulture, pretty damn good job, but the co-pilot seat of the Reclaimer is quite boring. One clicking is not, it's not Star Citizen, right? I'm not looking for the craziest game in the world or something really, really difficult or super skilled. I'm looking for a little more than just clicking, right? So we'll see what happens, and we'll see what they say here. I don't know the details, but it sounded a whole lot like damage control from what I did hear from people. So let's see what they have to say around structural salvage on Inside Star Citizen.
So what happened since the last time we talked about Salvage? So the last time we talked about it, it was about the prototypes that we were doing with the entities spawned from the entire piece, so the thousands and thousands of entities.
We had to reconsider our approach quite a lot because it was apparent from the prototype that several aspects of it weren't really going to work the way we wanted to.
With the demo failing, or basically showing us the limits of our engine, which was the entity.
I mean, yeah, they showed it failing. I didn't think that it was going to... I thought they were going to figure a way around it, but it's clear.
Count by showcasing that it takes a really long time to spawn all the entities that would fit the size of an 890 jump.
We also had to reconsider some things because we wanted to get this in players' hands as soon as possible. So that means making a few adjustments to the scope.
We were asked to come up with a solution by end of this year, which is structural salvage.
Can I hear that again?
We were asked to come up with a solution by end of this year, which is structural salvage.
Whoa. So, and this is why you never give a hard time to the actual developers working on it. That is very telling what happened. And that's sort of what I thought is what happened. Is that you have to deliver something, no matter how bad it is. Come up with something quick. Here we are. Jeez. Yeah, give them something to shut up for a while. And I think a lot of people didn't shut up because I think we expected more, I think, with this. But damn. That is surprisingly open from them. Surprisingly open.
Structural salvage is breaking apart various ships in order to break down the pieces into construction material, which then you can sell. So it's just removing stuff from the persistent database.
So one of the challenges of developing a live game like Star Citizen is that we have to constantly be weighing up, trying to perfect a feature, which could take...
This guy doesn't know he has a twin, by the way, in the United States. I deal poker to a guy that looks like when I tell you exactly... I dealt poker to a guy, he was so cool too. He was one of my favorite poker players I ever dealt to. I can't unsee it when he talks.
Years, or trying to get something playable in players' hands so that we can start getting
His name was
feedback
Eric.
from it and learning from it and figuring out how it fits in with the rest of the game.
So it was very important for us that we get some version of it out this year. It's not the full version yet, but it's a good first step that allows us to test the feature and close the ships that we already have, that are the Vulture and the Reclaimer.
I certainly hope we haven't closed the Reclaimer. The Vulture, I could say, feels pretty closed. Outside of, I would love to fracture things within that fracturing area personally, but yeah.
The new Vulture gameplay builds on what we already have. The idea is that you'll approach a wreck.
We want to encourage you to use the hull scraping first, so you don't lose the RMC in the process.
Which is higher value per SEU than construction materials. So the Vulture is equipped with a resonance field, which allows you to charge up energy on the target. Assuming that it's still in one piece, if you've not already blown it up with guns or missiles or something, you'll have to fracture it first.
A fracture field is built up between the arms, but it's also projected outwards.
which will break it down into various parts.
We wanted to make sure that the resonance
That's something. Did you hear what Torsten said? Our fracture field is between the arms, but it also projects outwards. So maybe the plan is for this to eventually fracture in here.
field wasn't going to create opportunities for griefing. So we've taken the precautions a step further from hull scraping, which requires that the target's shields are off, to structural salvage requiring that the ship's power is entirely off.
Okay.
So it'll be quite hard to use that offensively unless you find a way to disable the target's power plant.
And then you switch to the disintegration.
I mean, distortion, does it not disable the power plant? Was Burks able to do that yesterday? I know he was trying on his stream when we rated him, is like EMP or distort somebody down and then swoop in and blast them, I think is something that could be possible if you're still down for like the 5-minute time period that they said you would be.
Mode, which then disintegrates those parts and draws them into your salvage ship as construction material.
Oof.
Then into the grinder and then into the internal storage, and from
It looks
there
like
you
a
can
ghost.
then move it out through the filler station into the cargo grid.
The internal storage is one of the great additions we've made here.
What that is basically temporary storage between you gathering the material and you putting the material into cargo boxes.
Best
You
change.
have more space inside of your ship, so when you now go back to the filler stations, instead of the material just being stored in the filler station, you now draw from this pool of internal storage.
That is slightly bigger than the actual cargo capacity of the Vulture and the Reclaimer, so you can basically fill up your ship first. While it is still filling, while it is partly full, or when it is full, you have someone else or yourself go down to the filler station and basically convert everything or all the resources that you have.
The Reclaimer is not larger, right? The Reclaimer is still a bit smaller than what it can hold, I believe.
Inside the internal storage into the cargo boxes. The boxes come out automatically, so they deplete the internal storage and you will be able to move those boxes around on the cargo grid.
Which does really help with the player experience of the Vulture. A lot of people were saying was problematic because there was a lot of getting up from the seat, going back, and then going back to the pilot's seat again. So this is an improvement there. Once you've essentially got all of the stuff out of the filler stations.
So this is an older video, just in case you guys can see it there or here. I don't know what the current PTU price is, but yesterday's PTU, so Wednesday for me, was 14.3K. They upped RMC, and construction materials went down to 6K.
You'll be able to fly them somewhere and sell them.
The Reclaimer gameplay is very similar to that of the Vulture, except that it's all done by the claw operator, who is the co-pilot seat.
You may notice that the claw of the Reclaimer will look different. I think the art team did a really good job there.
So we got the request to start looking at the structural salvage feature support. The feature team reached out to us and explain to us what they wanted to do and how it was all going to work. And obviously that means that from our point of view, there's a few things we needed to do. It's always had this kind of great big claw underneath it, underslung under the cab. And now was the time that we were going to look at it and kind of make that nice kind of feature of the ship actually function.
Now we have the gameplay.
So here's the like one of the biggest struggles that I have with Star Citizen is you got the ship team, and there's no way that you can make these schedules work, and that's just how we end up in the situations that we're in. Is you have the ship team that needs to make a schedule in advance. You have the gameplay teams that also want to make schedules in advance, but those never really line up with ship and gameplay kind of coming together. They addressed the claw here to fit with the changes that the team decided to make with this structural salvage thing. But I think a lot of people who use the Reclaimer want to see it get a very large update, especially in the salvage processing cargo areas. You would think that the ship team would work for the gameplay team in a video game, right? But the ship team just does whatever they do, and if they have some extra time, they'll help out on things like this, is basically how it works right now. And then if that's the case, if the ship team are the guys, you would think that the gameplay teams would follow what they're doing, but it just, the schedules never seem to quite align, right? Properly. So it's just, it's a bit of a mess, I think. And I don't think it's ever possible to like get those things right where everything comes together, right? Like, you remember hearing about the 600i rework? Why are we doing a 600i rework if nobody's really working on player transport missions or something like that? And then if we are working on salvaging, why aren't we working on the redoing the Reclaimer to fit entirely with that new gameplay? And saying gameplay doesn't bring in so much money is the biggest cop-out I've ever heard in my entire life. I played a game called Valheim yesterday. Ugly, simple, but very good. And it sold and made as much money as Star Citizen in a year, in a month, because it had gameplay. Right? So to ever say that is insane. The excitement around Star Citizen at CitizenCon was mostly in the engine, but also what they showed with Squadron. And a lot of what they showed with Squadron was gameplay. And that's what people got excited about. I think that's a huge cop-out. Gameplay is king, and gameplay is going to sell this game. That is what is going to sell Star Citizen. Star Citizen has... A lot of people look at the number $500 million, $600 million and think that that's a lot of money. But video games make a lot more money than that. Actual video games. Because they deliver. They have something to play. People are excited about it. People buy it. That's not what has happened with Star Citizen over the course of its history.
Defined and redesign or revisualize the claw.
We didn't want to just kind of start from scratch. We wanted to take the essence of the original, but rework it to a way that now made sense with how the actual feature works as a whole. One of the things we wanted to do was make sure that the claw was in the player view when you were sat in the operator seat. And because of that, we tried a few different options out with the claw kind of like facing forward originally, and then we kind of had it facing up.
We wanted to have the hand of the claws actually upward facing so that we have it easier accessible by the tractor beam gunners on the Reclaimer so they can feed into the hand. But we realized with the updated position that is more forward facing, it makes more sense because weirdly navigate that the hand is below it. And with the tractor beam, it still works.
You will no doubt have noticed that we're no longer calling this feature munching, and that's because we just didn't have the bandwidth to support an actual physical munching action of the claw.
On the original, it was like a claw that would rip things apart. Now the feature isn't working like that.
So now it acts as the field emitter for the resonance and disintegration fields.
You can still start with hull scraping, and we highly encourage you to.
Okay, I mean, they didn't have the bandwidth to do it. I think that was obviously very clear. And then we got a very mining-like system. They already know and have that and all that stuff. I'm just going to ask you guys in chat because I haven't watched it. Are they going to address Maelstrom or anything at some point?
To actually do that.
Sorry. I'm going to wait and see. Yes? Okay, cool.
So that you get
I'm not
the
gonna go into
RMC, which we will increase in value.
rant then.
So it will be worth your time to actually do the extra step. And claw will activate the resonance field or fracture field of the claw. And the claw operator then needs to communicate with the pilot to bring the claw into the position of the target that you want to fracture. Once
Okay, so that's one thing that they've addressed with the gameplay since PTU is that the claw operator has to communicate with the pilot to get closer. Not necessarily the pilot. It can actually be the turret operators and moving material to the claw. But that is, yeah, like what Blue says in chat. Spoiler alert, the claw operator is the pilot. Because you're not going to have a pilot sit there, do nothing, and a co-pilot sit there and do nothing. They can both do very little, and at the same, it takes very little time to move between the seats. So, unsuccessful on this multi-crew aspect of this specific feature, I would say. Wildly unsuccessful when it comes to there needing to be a pilot and there needing to be a co-pilot. Because you don't. They could just be the same, and you could bounce between the seats. And then somebody in the turret can move stuff to the ship quite easily, and it'll be fine. Yeah, part of me thinks they should just merge the seats and stop pretending. That gives the pilot something to do, right? And I think that it'll be a lot better of a situation. Now, knowing that they want to go in the direction of the co-pilot actually doing something, it's unsuccessful for now. Just keep telling them that this is not the way you want it to be, and they will address it in their own way. Whether we get munching, whether they make this more engaging, whatever they do, we know that they're going to address it at some point. It took them a very long time with mining, but they did something with mining. Not everybody loves, and I think something should... Since salvaging took a more chill route, whatever they do with this should be more chill, because I think that's been the theme of salvaging. But the one thing that I don't want to happen is, let's say you're breaking down the structure of a ship and you're getting titanium, copper, gold, ores that you mine, right? Refinable ores that you mine. If this is a simpler way of gathering that stuff, then nobody will ever mine. So hopefully there's a reason to mine. Hopefully there's a reason to salvage, maybe unique materials between the two. But both of them are resource gathering mechanics. And what was so special about mining for me, not was how complicated it is now, although I do enjoy it. It was simply that I was raising and lowering a laser, right? That was nice. Just a little something more engaging for the co-pilot seat is enough for me. The sweet spot is getting there, but I don't think we're there yet.
The target is in the fracture field of the claw operator will press a button, a timer will run down, and the ship that is affected by it will break into pieces.
Currently, you're not able to move the claw around, but the remote turrets do have tractor beams on them.
Not only you can hold the objects or...
He said currently you're not able to move the claw around. Okay. So that's a little foreshadowing to something that they want to do.
Rotate the objects with the tractor beams. You can now also pull the objects into the resonance field or into the disintegration field.
The idea is that you use the tractor beams to grab any drifting pieces and move them into the field.
And the next step then,
Yes, except the person in the tractor beam cannot see the sweet spot UI. So you have the person in the claw pretending like they're important, saying a little bit forward, a little bit back, rotate it a little bit, and it is very clunky, very not great of an experience. But then again, if they're not doing that, then all they're doing is left clicking. I don't know, man. It's there's just something more that's got to give here. I don't know what it's going to be though. Just something.
is actually converting those pieces that you just created into the resources that you want to gather. And for that, the claw operator will switch into the disintegration mode. Again, you press a button, the ship is basically heated up and then converted into a material.
We needed a way of...
We need manual cutting. No, we don't. I think we all know that manual cutting is a stretch goal in this scenario and very complicated and probably incredibly difficult to do. Right? In the end, this is resource gathering. In every other MMO, resource gathering is walk up to a rock, click E, collect. Right? That's it. Mining, I think, took mining to a level that I was like, this is awesome. Right? Now, if manual cutting is, placing breaching charges or I don't know, right? Like we know that the ships are going to break up into certain pieces, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I just don't see that as a really, in a multiplayer environment, that really being a thing. Right? Like I saw Elliot say, where's Shipbreaker and SC? That's what a lot of people are saying. It should be like Hard Space Shipbreaker. Hard Space Shipbreaker, I don't know how many years it took to come out, but the only thing they thought about was salvaging a couple of ships. Right? The people who wanted Hard Space Shipbreaker in this, that was probably unrealistic expectations. And yes, it was very obvious Elliot was memeing it, in case you guys didn't know, because it was all caps and stuff with an emote and stuff. It is a meme for you to think that that's where we were going to go. And I think a lot of people thought that that's what I wanted. Maybe a little bit of risk involved would be nice. Maybe a little bit of thinking would be nice, or moving around or something, right? And we just don't quite have that at the moment.
Collecting all that material, and that's where we decided to take some inspiration from what we did on the Vulture. Between these kind of big emitters, we were still sucking in all this material, and that material was then being processed and ground up.
How dare they show this area?
Sent down to the main ship itself.
How dare they show this area like it's meaningful at all?
And then directly moved into the internal storage of the Reclaimer.
The filler stations in the Reclaimer have been...
I don't know how, like, I said, how dare they? That's a little ridiculous. Like, it's not that serious, but it's just stupid.
Changed as well, because the Reclaimer is such a big ship, and having it just one SCU containers for like 360 SCU of space was laborious.
To that, we also allow you to create bigger
Everything about the filler station is a positive change so far.
boxes now on the Reclaimer, so it's not only the 1 SCU boxes that you currently have, but it's 1, 2, we don't have 4, but we have 8 and 16.
Which then you can go about stacking to your heart's content.
We really wanted to reduce the amount of back and forth that you have to do, and we think it's a good solution.
It's a great one. It's not just good, it's great.
One of the distinctions with the Reclaimer, though, is that it can break apart basically any size target, whereas the Vulture is limited to only up to a certain size of ship.
What? I didn't know this.
So currently anything above, I think it's the Star Runner, can't be fractured by the Vulture, which is something you would need the Reclaimer to fracture. So if you can find one of these big wrecks, obviously there's a lot of material to be gained from this, which means obviously more SCU to be sold at the end, which is vastly more profit. We like to think...
Who's Michael D? Is this Michael?
think that it would be more profitable to do this than the Vulture, but obviously the Vulture is still very much convenient if you're a single player who goes around doing single player salvage.
We're still very interested in enhancing the destruction side of structural.
Vulture can't break a hammerhead. I had no idea. Nice, because I never used the Vulture on anything but the smaller ships. He's a Sith Lord. He does with the coat. But yeah, I guess So the thing for me is I'm still trying to figure out a situation where I would use the Vulture instead of a Reclaimer. Because the thing about the system being so simple is that you would, obviously, like, whether or not I have one, right? But the, You know, like, I definitely, what I love about mining is the laser sizes. I think they did such a good job with that, because sometimes when you go for a smaller rock with a mole sized laser, a size 2, it just powers up so much, even with the smallest, lowest power rocks, that you just struggle with it. So, like, a prospector being there can help you. Right? I think really where the Vulture can succeed is actually probably with hull scraping, because they're able to move so easily around a ship, I think, which is pretty sick.
Salvage, more similar to what was originally conceptualized with munching, but we're going to have to wait for Maelstrom to be more fully realized before we can start experimenting.
Sorry, guys. I think this is where he addressed it, so we'll go back just a bit.
Interested in enhancing the destruction.
Single player salvage.
We're still very interested in enhancing the destruction side of structural salvage, more similar to what was originally conceptualized with munching, but we're going to have to wait for Maelstrom to be more fully realized before we can start experimenting with that.
Perfect.
So we've done a few things.
And the thing is if you just come out and say that, and the community doesn't have to pretend and defend you without knowing any information and just assuming that's how it's going to be, a lot of people, yeah, dude, you were right. You know, everyone who came in and said, you know, just wait for Maelstrom, and it's obviously not the first iteration or whatever, right? Yeah, of course. Obviously, it wasn't the first iteration, but I think I wasn't as concerned with the feature as much as I was concerned about the flagship ship, the Reclaimer. It's a ship I bought, but I don't care about that. I bought that forever ago, right? I think when I bought the Reclaimer, I was dating my ex-girlfriend who I had broken up with, years of being single, years of dating my wife, then got married, right? Like, so many things happened in my life from the time of when I bought the Reclaimer to, like, none of that matters to me. It's more that there are some flagships and some like staples of the Star Citizen game, and that is one of them, right? The Reclaimer is one of the pillars of the Star Citizen ships. It's one of the things when if you're going to show a new player the size and scale and the detail of a ship in the game, and then you'll also communicate to them what it will eventually be able to do, you're going to bring out a Reclaimer, because you walk up to it and it's so big, and then you show them the claw and you show them the area of where all this salvage is going to be processed. And then they came out with this. If you weren't disappointed, I'd be surprised, right? But SaltEMike, this is how they developed everything in Star Citizen so far. I feel like a lot of people love to get upset because you can't tell them they're wrong. Well, I was upset, and I don't love to be upset. I hate to be upset. You may not think that, but I absolutely hate being angry or seeing the worst in everything. I love being happy. and I was so excited for something unique and special and different that, yeah, I was really disappointed when this came out. You know, because this is what you build upon. You know what I mean? And I think that they have a great system to build upon on the interior of the ship. The filler station, the buffer storage, fantastic. Right? But, and so happy with that. The Vulture and the Reclaimer exterior and how you interact with the system and how you create this salvage is really disappointing to me. So, yeah, I just, this statement that he made is all I really need to hear, is that they want to take it to that place. And if they were just ahead of this, I think there would be a lot less polarization around the system. I think some people do enjoy it. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying jumping in, but I'm enjoying moving the boxes around the interior, deciding what ship to go to next, so on and so forth, stuff like that, right? I'm not enjoying I'm certainly not enjoying sitting in a co-pilot seat and left clicking. That's where I'm not enjoying things. Visually, we know that those can improve over time. That's whatever. I am not enjoying sitting in a co-pilot seat, left clicking and saying, move it a little closer, move it a little farther, rotate it a little bit. Yeah, no.
Things to improve the quality of life of Salvage in general. First of all, the Vulture has some interesting features that you can control each of its little salvage arms independently, so that you can hold onto a target with a tractor beam.
Some of the elements that you will have in front of you, the sum of all the pieces that you will have in front of you, will be too much for your cargo hold.
Yeah, I figured this out yesterday.
What you shouldn't do in that time is actually trigger the disintegration, because every material inside that field will be disintegrated. So material will be lost that way. This is where the tractor beams come in place, because you can move out those objects that would make your internal storage overspill. So you get this nice little gameplay of, yeah, I actually pick what I want to grab. We also already...
Poor guy looks like he's being held hostage and forced to read from a note. No, but that statement at the beginning is pretty telling of... somebody else made the decision of, you have to put this out, kind of in the state that it's in. But then that person isn't standing in front of the camera defending that decision. These people are. And that entirely doesn't seem fair, based off of that statement at the beginning, right? It sounds like somebody said this has to go live and you have to defend the work. And it's like, that's kind of fucked up.
Slight update to the crafting that we have in there. So now that we have two materials, we adjusted the crafting costs in the filler station. So they are now more realistic, so they are not punishingly expensive anymore. For the future, it will be even more meaningful, because then like the material composition will be different. So it's not only construction materials, but it's specific to the parts that you have there. But that is for the far future, so it's not for now.
One of the most prominent...
Hey, 12 months or so. 12 months or so, Sitcon. How far is 12 months? I mean, we are now at like 11 months or so. Where are we going to see blueprints first? I imagine in the filler stations.
Quality of life features is the changes to the filler station on both the Vulture and the Reclaimer. They now have the option to set the filler station to auto-eject mode, where it will just repeatedly eject the last selected crate, which lets you rapidly unload the internal storage into cargo boxes, as long as you're quick enough at putting them on the cargo grid. Releasing Structural Salvage in 3.22 will give players an opportunity to play it and start giving us feedback on how we can continue to build on it for the future.
Salvage, like its industrial profession cousins, mining and cargo, is an iteratively developed feature that gets its next evolution in the upcoming Alpha 3.22. And if we've learned anything this week, it's that the path is almost never a straight line. I'm serious. Torsten has been on Spectrum all week, providing even newer details than what was available when we filmed.
Torsten's a legend, dude. An absolute legend.
You're gonna want to check that out. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the process of game development with you. We'll see you all here next week.
Nice. I don't know if there's any... Elliot, you're not. Sorry, dude. I'm just kidding. We love you too, Elliot. I had mentioned you and him in the same sentence of passion, and that's what we really need. So thank you to everybody for all that. But yeah, I think that's kind of the ISC that a lot of people needed to hear, including myself. After his post that he made on Spectrum, I was pretty comfortable being patient. I will continue to hammer home that secondary seat on the Reclaimer needs to be a bit more interesting. And if I had my preference in the Vulture, nothing would break up unless it was between those prongs, right? But I think that is being very very particular on that front. But yeah, I totally get it. And I am excited that they said, hey, we want to take it to a place with Maelstrom at some point. And when that gets in, then we will begin prototyping. And I was like, all right, sounds good. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. When they have it in their hands, they'll start prototyping and rock and roll then. And we'll see what happens a bit then. And then hopefully that's where we'll get like maybe a more fuller Reclaimer rework, because that would be really nice. I really, really hope that if the team plans on working on structural salvage in the future, that they do schedule out a bit of time for the ship team to address the Reclaimer and a lot of its legacy issues with cargo decks and things like that. That would be fantastic, let me tell you. But yeah, we'll have to see. Good ISC, very informative in terms of why it was pushed in the state that it was in, and what they plan on doing in the short term and in the long term. So I think that covered everything. And again, it was really, really a really great start to some parts and not a really great start for others. So we'll see what happens. And I think the not really great start is what Maelstrom's going to address. So we'll have to see.